One of our colleagues did find a very interesting video. Okay, the video is in Ukrainian, so it's not point for me to try to translate this to you. But what was really important about this is the way in which these Ukrainians saw the talks. So basically, he has recognized something that I've been saying and our team has been saying in the commentary section for the last few months to every single person that believes that Ukraine can actually end this war without giving up territory. Okay, so as we know, at the beginning of the war, the Russians were willing to reach an agreement with the Ukrainians, and obviously they didn't take all the territory that they have taken today. Some people say that the agreement was unfair because what it meant is that Ukraine will remain neutral. Ukraine will reduce his military capabilities. Ukraine will not impose a threat to Russia, okay, by not incorporating itself into NATO. Very recently, we also shared a video from Biden in which a reporter asked him if they're going to accelerate or make it easier the incorporation of Ukraine within NATO, which is a promise that they made to Ukraine back in 2022. And Joe Biden responded, no, a clear no. And this has been the message that Ukraine has been receiving from NATO ever since the beginning of the war. So some people ask themselves, are the Ukrainians really understanding what they're saying to them? They're saying to you that you're not going to be fast-tracked into NATO and you need to meet all the conditions. And they're telling to you that you're not going to be fast-tracked into the European Union because you have to meet all the conditions. Which actually means that Ukraine, one, will have to finish the war because they have to be in peace. Two, they need to sort out the internal corruption issues, which they have been getting worse since the start of the war and since the West started giving millions and millions to the Ukrainian government. Okay? A lot of money just disappeared. Okay? So the statement from this soldier, which I'm going to read now, is really important. Okay? Let's listen to it. So, Lieutenant Colonel of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, the Siatnik, okay, he says this, on the need for the negotiations, even at the cost of giving up territories. This is what he's going to be talking about. That's the topic. So he says, any war will end with negotiations anyways. Now, to lie and say, that's it. Now we will 100% drive them all beyond the borders of 1991, referring to the Russians. And tomorrow we will win. Is complete nonsense. All wars end in negotiations. Whatever one might say, are there soldiers at the front who speak categorically with no negotiations? So, there are such people, but, this is what the reporter asked him. And he responded, there are such people, but one must approach everything logically and one must look realistically. And I think that at some stage there will be negotiations. Maybe Ukraine will give something away. Ooh. Maybe she will give the territories of Donbass, Luhansk. And I think that maybe it is right to give these territories, because the population of Donbass and Luhansk is completely pro-Russian. And although this, of course, is the territory of Ukraine, people cannot be changed there. Their thinking cannot be changed. Take it easy and attach to yourself the enemy who will be inside your country. He says, no land, earth. I don't understand that. But you can kick it out. The reporter asked, why? Women and children who live there. And the reporter asked, if they like Russia, they should go to Russia. And he says, but they won't leave. These are their apartments and their houses. Wow. So it's the first time I hear this from an Ukrainian soldier. Obviously, I heard it from Ukrainian people, which are just fed up with the way in which the government is going. But for a soldier, is actually the first time I heard this. And it is something that we have been discussing. Throughout history, there has been many wars, and this one is no different. During wars, countries lose territories. Okay, as I said before or previously on another video, there is a territory between Germany and France that both countries claim to be theirs. However, to date is within France. And many people in this territory, they speak German. Okay? So if there is a conflict tomorrow between Germany and France, who do you think these people will be loyal to? Or if France decides to launch civil war against the people of this territory because they want to join Germany, wouldn't you see the same situation you see in Ukraine today? Anyways, this is something that we've been saying for a long time. The Ukrainians keep making things from their side just to prove their population that they are winning and that something is happening. So we get this argument quite a lot, which is the Russians are not doing anything. I thought was the second best army in the world, but they're being kicked by the Ukrainians, which is a much more smaller country. But let's clarify this. Ukraine had the largest and best military in Europe in terms of manpower, training, and also material. And you need to include the material that was given to Ukraine by Western powers as well, Western countries. So the first thing they said is that the Russians were driven out of Kiev, of the region of Kiev. However, I don't know if you've seen the publication on Telegram in which Putin, that shows the agreement between Russia and Ukraine, in which they agreed, just to find peace, to remove the Russian troops from Kiev. So that was an agreement. That wasn't actually the Ukrainians driving the Russians out. It was conflict, definitely. The Ukrainians did bomb the Russians when they were leaving, and the Russians also bombed the Ukrainians while they were leaving. But the agreement was reached. The Russian side decided to withdraw from that part. But the Ukrainians did show this, or they claimed this, as a counter-offensive which destroyed the Russians completely. Then the Russians felt betrayed, and they understood that it won't be any kind of negotiations. Therefore, they say, let's switch to a war. Still call a military operation that they didn't declare war, but they decided to change their objectives. One of them taking Donbass and Luhansk, which is what this guy is mentioning here. Because there are Russian speakers, ethnically, there are also Russians, the people that live there. So the second one and the biggest one that the Ukrainians claim as a win as well was Kherson. So the Americans and the Russians reached an agreement to withdraw the Russian troops from the western side of the river, this Dnieper River in Kherson. That agreement was reached because the Russians withdrew and the Ukrainians did not use their HIMARS to attack them because the HIMARS are actually controlled by the Americans. So they did not allow them to use them against the Russians. And not a single Russian soldier died during the Kherson offensive. However, the Ukrainian army, they worked over mines again, and they had very heavy losses, which no one talks about. But they managed to reach the Dnieper River, walking through basically empty land. There were no Russian soldiers there. So we'll leave you these here. If you want to go on Telegram and read it yourself. But it's a really interesting statement from this Ukrainian soldier, in which he clearly expressed that it has to be negotiations one way or the other, because the Russians won't give up. And if the Ukrainians don't give up, sorry, but Ukraine is going to be in a worse position than it is already today, which is very sad. We'll continue informing you.